You're listening to Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong, all on Georgia Radio Network.
Welcome to episode 153 of the Let Me Tell You Why You're Wrong podcast. I'm Dave Roberts. With me, as always, it's my podcast partner in crime, writer, journalist Jessica Szilagyi.
Hey, what's going on?
Oh, it's another beautiful day in the ATL. How are you?
Good. Did you enjoy the inauguration activities this week?
I did not see any of it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm aware of what happened.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I'm aware of what happened, but I was working. I was being productive so that my tax dollars could help pay for that debacle.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I did not watch any. It was the first time I haven't, which is a little bit sad, but work's been kind of busy, so I didn't have the TV on and I wasn't live streaming. I saw clips and I read about it, but it's the first time that I haven't, at least had it on in the background to watch various things.
Right. And look, every inauguration speech is the same. It's just not that big of a deal. I did think it was funny that the Guard troops outnumbered viewers like 10 to 1. I think there were 2,500 people there. There are 25,000 troops.
Yeah, and I thought yes, that every speech is the same, but, people were quick to attack and unload on Biden's. And while I don't really agree with a lot of the things he said, my decision not to watch it was not rooted in like the fact that I didn't vote for him or that I don't care for him as an elected official. It was just like, what's the point? We have belabored the presidential election to the point where everyone is just like, enough already. And honestly, I was kind of like, let's get on with it and let's see what he's going to do.
Right. Look, it's one of those. I've been busy at work, and this week, as the show's drop started, a super busy week. Just I've got stuff going on, so it wasn't something I was going to make time for. If I were home, it would be on in the background. If I was just sitting in the office, I might have it on in the background and have it going on. Just I had other stuff to do.
Yeah,
you're right. By the time we got to last Wednesday, I've long since been over all the election stuff. I just assume he's swearing in the Oval Office, sit down and get on with the business of, ruining my life.
Well, and he was quick to do that, so congrats. I did think it was interesting. I mean, the ones that got all the attention obviously were about the LGBT stuff with girls' sports and the immigration things and quarantining upon entry to the U.S. and whatnot. But I did think it was interesting that one of his first acts was to rescind the Trump administration's 1776 commission, which was a response to something we talked about a lot on this show, which was the 1619 Project. And I mean, first of all, the fact that there was I don't necessarily have a problem with rescinding that because I don't think that the federal government should be involved in that anyway. And I mean, we shouldn't be putting educational standards in place based off of the New York Times either. But that's another show that people can look up if they want to hear us rant about that. But I say all that to say, what a priority. That was among the first 10 things he did as president of the United States was to rescind a commission on U.S. history, basically a written response to someone else's opinion of how history unfolded. It's indicative of the times we're in.
Yeah, and look, he got busy with his pen. I guess pens. I guess they have a training. After the electors get together, you must have a training on how to sign something with 15 different pens.
Sure.
Honestly, I'm impressed that he can spell his name.
Dave.
Well, hey, he is a lawmaker. 40 years in D.C. does rot your brain. But there must be something. I couldn't sign with 15 different pens. I mean, every letter or part letter gets its own pen, so people can walk away with it and put it in their office and say, that's the pen that the president signed this piece of legislation. But yeah, I thought it was interesting on the 1776 project. I'm not really happy about the quarantine order, even though it is completely unenforceable.
So does that mean, well, yeah, it's not like we're one of these little islands where, that chick from here ended up, was the Cayman Islands where she got in trouble. But does that mean when you go out of the country, you'll have to quarantine upon return?
That is what I'm seeing. The idea being, and there's no guidance on how long you have to quarantine. Yeah. So you've got to get a test before you leave the country. So you get a negative test. You get a negative test before you come back. And then they're wanting you to quarantine and they haven't, as of recording of the show, they haven't described the length of time, but it's completely unenforceable with the number of Americans that fly internationally. So if you're an airline pilot or you're on the air crew, you could never go anywhere. You say that the quarantine is 2 weeks, which has been the standard quarantine for anything. If you're on an air crew, you come home, you're not supposed to go anywhere. You're supposed to stay home. And then you go fly again. So I don't think it's enforceable. The only people that I've seen busted, besides the one down in the islands, there was a pilot in Hawaii. Mm-hmm. And he was on social media taking pictures and openly flaunting it. So I would guess that's the only way you're going to get caught. And I don't think there's any punishment for it because it's an executive order.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
So, when I get back in the country, say you have to quarantine. Now I need to go to work. Well, you have to quarantine or else what? So there has to be, if you want some people to do something, there has to be a penalty to it. And hopefully by the time I go in September, this will all be done.
That's awfully wishful.
Well, I said that close to this time last year. Oh, by the time October gets here, because we were planning on going out of the country. By the time October gets here, it'll probably be done. Nope. All it did was get worse. So, speaking of getting worse, people are already upset with Ossoff and Warnock.
This is my favorite story from last week.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's hilarious. It's hilarious that the people who voted for those two clowns are already disappointed.
Yeah, the pair campaigned on doling out $2,000, and that number is already down to $1,400. We have a quote here. If you send John and the Reverend to Washington, those $2,000 checks will go out the door, restoring hope and decency for so many people who are struggling right now. Biden said at a rally for both candidates on the 4th of January.
Yeah. This is quite like Brian Kemp and the teachers' race, right? Like, everyone was livid. He said he was going to dole out money, and then everyone was livid when the legislature cut it in half during the budgeting process, because we don't elect dictators and who single-handedly, impose and enact legislation and things of the sort. And so Ossoff and Warnock are at the mercy of Biden and everybody else. But what's hilarious to me is that Biden is the one that really threw them under the bus here, because he was like out at the rally. I mean, they put billboards up. The mailers that they sent out were all about, this is your pathway to $2,000, which, let me tell you something, my vote is worth a heck of a lot more than $2,000. So it's sad for these people, but it's just hilarious that, the way it unfolded. And my favorite quote, there was an article, it's been all over the news by the time this is dropping, but there was an article in Fox News where they interviewed a number of Democratic canvassers and workers and things, and this guy's quote is just epic. He said, "It feels like and a betrayal of the working class." Welcome to politics, buddy.
okay, in their defense, I think the phrasing was misfortunate. 1,400 plus the 600 makes the 2,000.
No, come on. No. Donald Trump sent out, I mean, his name was on those darn checks.
Yeah, quite literally.
Literally. Give me a break. You can't say that. Biden said 2,000 checks will go out, the dollar checks will go out the door.
Well, he stuck with it. It's not going to matter.
No, but it's just funny that they're like, how could you do this? Because one of the guys was like, I lied to people when I was knocking on doors. I didn't know it was a lie, but I lied, and those people really needed the money. Okay, well, not to break your heart or anything, but you know, they weren't going to get the money if they voted for the other guys. Like, they're going to get plenty of handouts with these two, so things will be just fine. Socialism is still intact.
They were going to get the money either way. It wasn't going to. The Senate wasn't going to hold it up. They were going to get the money either way. Because half of the Senate's got to run in a year. Primary start in a year. That's the oh god, that's a sad thing. We're in a nonstop election cycle now. Forever. So 2022 is already started. People are already putting together campaigns. They're already putting Warnock under a microscope, which I hope they do. So that can obviously sharpening the knives for Kemp and for Raffensperger. So we're in a nonstop election cycle, which is pretty sad that we can't just have at least a couple years of relative peace without playing politics, if I can talk. But no, they didn't learn anything from Kemp. And no, that's exactly what, and they'll do it again in 2 years. It'll be, what is Uncle Sugar going to give you? And Kemp will be out there going, hey, teachers, hey, you like that $1,000? There's more where that came from.
Yeah. And then, but what happens is then you end up with whoever the Democratic nominee is going to be, which is likely Stacey Abrams, saying, well, I'll give you 2,000. They have a bidding war of handouts, which is the most disgusting way to get elected. Oh, my policies were such that I had to pay people to vote for me. Cool. And
if you're opposed to Kemp, is $1,000 going to help you? If you are already not happy with Ossoff and Warnock, is that $600 difference what's really pushing you over the edge? And the only people that are going to use that are going to be someone in the Democratic primary. It's not going to be. I can't see a Republican standing up going, "Look, they shortchanged you. I'd have given you the whole 2,000. You should have sent me up there." The only argument would be there's no difference. They would have passed the 14 anyway, so you voted for these guys and they changed nothing. And that's not exactly a proactive argument for getting yourself elected, say that nothing ever changes. So then there's Congresswoman Nikema Williams, who introduced a resolution to ban now former President Trump from the U.S. Capitol in perpetuity.
Okay, I'll run with this one. Nikema Williams, she's the Georgia Democratic Party, or the Democratic Party of Georgia chairwoman, and then she's the one that she was a state senator, and she won the special election to replace John Lewis in Georgia's 5th district. So she's been there for, I don't know, like 45 days or something, and not even. And she introduced a resolution to make it so that Trump could never return to the U.S. Capitol because he was a threat to our democracy, and because of his whole inciting violence and everything. And I found it extremely entertaining because in my opinion, no entity or body is more dangerous to our constitutional republic than the body that is Congress. And also, how often do we hear about presidents past presidents just hanging out at the Capitol. I mean, unless there's some crazy, important ceremonial thing going on, it's not like they're just hanging out in the gallery.
Funerals.
Okay, well, I'm not sure Trump would go to any of them, quite honestly.
I don't know. I mean, it all depends, but funerals.
But that's it. He's not going to be hanging out at the Capitol. Like, it's theatrics.
Sure it is, and she's pandering. And she can't point to a single racist policy Trump enacted. She can't point to a single time he incited anything. Because there's evidence to the contrary on both counts. It's pandering. It's also in a misguided attempt to keep him from running for office again. Because if he were banned from the U.S. Capitol, if he were to be reelected in 2024, he could not give the State of the Union from the House floor. It's not going to pass. Even the Democrats are like, this is stupid.
It is stupid, but it's just, she's not going to be there that long. And this is her claim to fame. Cool.
Yeah, this is it. This is her attempt to go back to her constituents and say, I stood up against that racist Trump.
Who left?
Really? He was gone. He was in Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah.
I mean, he's now President Emeritus. That's it. He's gone. If he runs again, you can run your mouth. Otherwise, it's like it'd be like somebody on the floor talking about Jimmy Carter or W or Clinton. They're irrelevant at this point. They built their libraries,
right? And
Bush goes and he does bicycle rides with veterans. He does a lot of good work, good charity work. But as far as policy goes, he's of no consequence. When the next president dies and there's an official funeral and a viewing and he lies in state in the Capitol Rotunda, the presidents will go in, they'll pay their respects, and that's it. It's not like Trump's going to go back to New York and run for Congress.
I thought there was rumors of him running for Senate in Florida.
There are rumors about everything.
Okay, but I'm just saying.
There are rumors that Trump was never going to leave office, that he was going to institute martial law, and Biden would never take the oath of office, and he would maintain control.
This is true.
There are rumors about everything.
This is true.
It would be hilarious if he ran for Senate in Florida. I just don't know who he would run against.
Rubio's, whose seat is up.
Man, I don't think the Republican Party needs that.
No, but I did say, because Rubio is up in 2 years, I was talking to someone about it last week, and I said it would actually be the best thing for Georgia and the possibility of taking back the Warnock seat to the GOP, because if Trump is causing a ruckus with Rubio, we won't be so on the forefront, which we could use a little reprieve.
Well, that's only if he beats Rubio in the primary. If you were to beat him in the primary, and then it went into the general, yes, the spotlight would come off of Georgia, but it wouldn't change things in the Senate. If whatever Democrat runs against him wins, and I don't think Trump wants to take that risk.
He can't lose again.
No, if he loses anything again, he's done. I mean, including his political capital. Go to your alma mater, go build a library. Go find a charity, put your name behind it, and show up and take pictures with people who want to take pictures with you, and go be gracious. It's just not his nature. Although I did hear he left a very nice letter for Biden.
I heard that too. They didn't really talk about that much.
Of course they did, because it doesn't match their talking points. But Trump the character and Trump the man are two different things. And most of the people that you hear that worked for him, people that even down to waiters and things like that, have talked about what a nice guy he is, or some of the nice things that he did for people who worked for him, found out they had a kid with cancer, would pay off their medical bills and things like that, that he just, that's not the person that we saw. What he became was a caricature. So, but not to bog down into someone who is now irrelevant in national politics, at least for the next year. We have Senate Democrats filed ethics complaint against Hawley and Cruz over election challenge.
So when I first saw the headline, I don't know if you heard this news last week or if you were paying attention to how this went down, but I thought it was for them doing it in general. But then I found out the complaint was actually because they proceeded with their objections after the violent attack, quote. And it lent legitimacy to the mob's cause and made future violence more likely, according to the letter. And so they want them to investigate whether Cruz and Hawley encouraged the violent insurrection at the Capitol, whether they coordinated with organizers of the pro-Trump rally immediately before the riot, whether they received donations from any organizations or donors that funded the rally, and whether the senators engaged in criminal conduct or unethical or improper behavior. Well, arguably everyone in Congress should be under investigation for criminal conduct or unethical or improper behavior. However, with this, what choice did they have? I think it would have been worse if they would have gone after, Kelly Loeffler did it, but if they would have gone back into the Senate chambers after everything happened and said, you know what, we don't agree. From a principled perspective, that just means that if someone storms the Capitol, you can get your elected officials to change their mind on why they supposedly stormed it in the first place. Right.
And that's kind of what I was thinking, is not giving up on the objective or objections. God almighty, would be worse. They had already planned to do it. It was already going to happen. Now, look, if they took donations from any group that was at the protest, well, so?
They're not mutually exclusive.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is so?
People from the U.S. military were reportedly at the protest.
Well, yeah, a Air Force vet died. She took one in the chest.
Yeah, but they said, there was an article on the Hill, I loved it. It said nearly 1 in 5 people at the protest had ties to the U.S. Armed Forces. I'm like, okay, well, that's just a statistic. It doesn't.
Well, yeah, you can use statistics to prove any point you want.
Yeah.
The fact, when you say ties to, that's like saying alcohol involved crash. Not, it's a meaningless thing to say. They have ties to. That means ties to means you're in the military. You're active reserve or guard. You are former. You're a veteran. Your spouse is in or a veteran, or maybe your parents and you grew up an Army brat. So those statistics are absolutely useless, other than making talking points to say that veterans are the problem. I read some stuff on what they say are extremist symbols, and the Gadsden flag was one of them.
Yeah.
Like some of the shirts that, Lo and I both own, the grunt style shirts, they're saying are signs of someone who might be in favor of the insurgency and stuff like that. Or they're calling them white supremacist signals. Like, what? The Gadsden flag was about telling the government to back off. Don't tread on us. So there was a response. Hawley described the complaint as flagrant abuse of the Senate ethics process and a flagrant attempt to extract partisan revenge. Democrats appeared intent on weaponizing every tool at their disposal. Well, I don't reckon that's inaccurate.
No.
The fact is that they're trying to hammer down any sort of resistance. And look, Democrats objected to Bush. to Trump. It happens every cycle that people get up and they're heard. Everything that they do sets a precedent.
Yeah. They don't talk about that, though. I mean, the Republicans are living the same thing where things they did are coming back, and then they're like, oh my gosh, why do people behave like this? Well, I don't know, because you just all do.
Or when they change filibuster rules and things like that. When one party's in the majority, then when the other party goes to the majority, they act like it's the end of the world. Oh my God. How could you? It's the same thing what happened here with the voter laws and with the mail-in voting. A lot of those stuff. Things that Democrats championed in the 90s, now they're going, oh, that's suppression. That's awful. What is the point of an ethics complaint here versus what it's supposed to be? When I think ethics complaint, I think dirty money. Pay for play.
Yeah. Too much of a vested interest. Conflicts of interest that we don't talk about. I mean, gosh, we literally ignore those.
Yeah. They've got their fingers in everybody's pie. Yeah, those are ethics complaints. Taking money from lobbyists. Things that we really need to be investigating. Where's your money coming from? Hey, if you're a member of Congress and you've got somebody on your staff that's tied to the Chinese government, that's a kind of that may be an ethical issue. Using it as a hammer versus to beat down political discourse is not the intent of the ethics rules. Using campaign funds to pay somebody off, to pay off a jilted lover or something like that. Ethics violation. Saying that you don't think the vote count was correct is not an ethics violation.
Well, and the timing of when you said it is irrelevant. If they have that free speech to do that, if they have that, I hate to use the term free speech because they do have rules in there, but if they have the platform to say that, then it doesn't matter when they said it. And in my opinion, all this does, the people who think what they did was correct and was right and they wanted inquiries into it, an investigation, they're going to hail them as heroes no matter what. And their base is going to pat them on the back and say, we stand with you even though the Democrats are attacking you. So by Democrats dying on this hill, they're going to ensure that the GOP does things like this again.
And look, this is, again, pandering. This is using the people's time to pander, to campaign. Because there's no way there's going to be an ethics violation on this. There's no way. There's no way anybody could look at this and say, you violated your oath of office. And what they're investigating, they don't have evidence to investigate. They just want to investigate. They don't have anything leading them to say, well, we have a reason to believe that Cruz may have taken money from the Proud Boys or whatever, or Buffalo Boy or what anybody else, or believe that he coordinated with them. Hey, you guys gonna do this at 11:32? All right, I'm supposed to go on at 11:35. You need to make sure you get there before 11:35 to interrupt me, so that I get uninterrupted time when we come back into session. I need you to hold the building for at least 2 hours. You know damn well that's not what happened, and they know damn well that's not what happened. And the fact is, after this was done, they all went to the same cocktail party and laughed about it because it's all a joke to them. Mm-hmm. Cruz walks into to the cocktail party and goes, you USOB, what are you doing with that ethics thing? Oh, man, I'm trying to get reelected. You know how it is? Yeah, I know how it is. But these are our opinions, and not those of anyone not offering commentary on this show. So last week in the Georgia legislature, new House committee assignments from Der Speaker Ralston.
Yep.
Democrat Mary Margaret Oliver is placed on MARTOC.
Yeah, so she's now the chair. She's a Democrat. She's chair of the MARTOC, which is over the MARTOC operations and things and transportation matters. And she's from Atlanta, so there's value in her. I think she's into cab, but it makes me laugh because everyone's like, oh my gosh, look at this bipartisanship. There's shared power in the Georgia House, blah, 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 blah. That's because they're just different wings on the same bird. Like, this is not unexpected. Mary Margaret Oliver, the gun-grabbing liberal who drops legislation every single year to limit Second Amendment rights, hates conservative causes, and everything else, is buddies with Ralston and is just like Stacey Abrams was in that she plays by the rules and she votes no when she wants to, but she votes yes more than she votes no because they're all working together, and that's not good for Georgia. So congrats on the bipartisanship that you're giving the optics of. I mean, bipartisanship is only good when there's like checks and balances, not when you're all working together to just ram stuff through.
That's the same thing I was just talking about with the Senate. I mean, it's all a big joke.
Right. That's right. It's worse here, though, because they do so much. I mean, Congress does a lot in a single bill. You know, they're hundreds and thousands of pages, but we have a faster pace and pass more legislation and more new laws every single year.
In 40 legislative days.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, that's the politicking part of politics. Yeah, she's buddies with Ralston. I guarantee you every time she drops an anti-gun bill, she goes, the speaker grabs her, you know that's not going to pass. I know, but I got to do it. Oh, I know. Which also means that there's not a whole lot of GOP money being spent to unseat her because she's friends with the speaker.
Well, she's in a true blue district, too. I mean, she's in an area that they have no interest in.
Well, yeah, but you can make her spend money.
Sure. Why would they do that, though? She's she's pretty reliable. She only votes against the Constitution, so, I mean, it's no big deal.
That old thing?
Mm-hmm. I mean, we just change it anyway. Like, we don't like it, we just change it here in Georgia. It's awesome. It's freaking awesome.
So Shaw Blackman takes over House Ways and Means.
The only reason this is good is because he's taking over because Brett Harrell, who was the chairman, got defeated in his election in Gwinnett, and he needed to go. He said he was not going to run again, and then he ran again because he just loves power. And Brett Harrell is the one who ran, we've talked about him on the show, but he was the twerp that ran on the platform of never imposing a tax increase. T-splossed, that was on the ballot way back when, is what got him involved in politics, and he ended up being on the chairman of the Committee on Taxation in Georgia. So the fact that he lost is beautiful, and I'm glad he had to take his hiney to the House. But Shaw, who is from the Macon area, is now chairman, and it just sucks because he's a moderate conservative and has just been, I don't want to say corrupted because I don't think he's corrupt, but he's been entranced by the power and has quickly ascended. And so the fact that he's over this powerful committee means that he'll never return to conservatism. So whatever. Next.
It's a poison. The power's a poison.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer you get to it, the more you want. And it's everything.
It's mesmerizing.
Your office gets better when you're chairman of a committee like that. Everything gets better in your life for those 40 days that stretch into 3 months. Plus, the better committee you're on, the more likely you are to get reelected because the party will spend money. And there's a pride that constituents feel having their person in leadership. So it's how Ralston keeps getting reelected. Because the people up there in Blue Ridge like having their guy as speaker. You know, their buddy that they grab beers with on Friday afternoons is the guy who's in charge of whether things even make it to the floor. So we have Rick Jaspers is now over transportation after long tenure of Kevin Tanner.
Yeah, so Kevin Tanner left to run for Congress. He was in the race with Gertler and Andrew Clyde for Doug Collins' seat, and he lost, which I liked Kevin as a state rep. I mean, he wasn't my kind of legislator in terms of policy, but I thought the way that he conducted himself and things like that, he would always listen, and he was just responsive and constituent service wise. Like, he would be pretty open and honest about why he voted for something, even if he didn't agree. So I could respect that. But the funny thing about, well, it was good he lost for Congress because he was David Ralston's pick. But Rick Jaspers has kind of ping-ponged all over the map of, I guess, committees. He's served on special rules, and then he was over higher education and things like that. But he held Tom Graves' initial the House seat that's his district is Tom Graves served. So the fact that he's over transportation is hilarious because Murray, Gordon, and Pickens County aren't super transit oriented.
Yeah. I don't know. You know, part of that is state roads, and rural counties have a need for these state roads. I mean, like Paulding County. You know, with the widening projects, things like that. Obviously, they don't have any control over interstates.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's ascension to power, and that's how you get these seats, these chairmanships. So, Speaking of rising to power, we have judiciary.
Yeah, Chuck F-stration. He went from judiciary non-civil to judiciary, which I suppose is good because, I mean, all he ever did was make for more crimes. I mean, literally, the only thing to come through that damn committee was legislation to create more laws that would put people in jail and things like that. So, at least on the other side, he's stuck with civil matters. Not that great, but whatever. I'll take what I can get. That's just me trying to look at the positives.
Yeah, and he's been a frequent subject on the show with his...
Yeah, because he sucks.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the diplomacy. We call that the Jessica Doctrine. The Szilagyi.
He's the author of the strip club bill that was struck down as unconstitutional in the House. He and Renee. He and Renee. That's the only blessing of the 2021 session is she's not there.
She still makes news now and again, and she's another one who just needs to go away. So we have judiciary non-civil, James Burchett.
Yeah, I don't really know much about him, but I'm sure he's going to mess up, so we'll check back, I feel sure. I mean,
always on the sunny side, Jessica, always on the sunny side.
I mean, these people don't get these positions because they're like good stewards of taxpayers and limited government advocates. They get it because they do what Ralston wants, and they are willing to undercut other people to make sure that things continue as is. So pardon me for understanding that it's just stupid. What?
So we have Georgia Democratic legislators introduce bill for felon voting rights.
Yep. Josh McLaurin, who is pretty reasonable and is really great on justice reform matters. He's pushing the bill because right now under the Georgia Constitution, people who have been convicted of felonies that involve moral turpitude cannot be registered to vote until their sentences are complete, including paying probation, parole, and fines, and all of those things. But the state has not defined which felonies involve moral turpitude, and even as recently as the last election, this Georgia Secretary of State's office had to issue an order clarifying their position, which, two parts to that. One, I do think the legislature and I think the legislature has an obligation on things like this to be concise, but more importantly, the legislature has a duty to ensure that executors are not legislating from a different branch of government. And when you leave so much room for interpretation like this, you allow such rules to fluctuate based on who's in office, and that's totally unacceptable.
Yeah, and I don't like purposely vague, like moral turpitude.
Yeah,
because that's left up to interpretation. And look, I don't think the rest of the code on this is unreasonable. You have to be done with parole. You have to have completed your sentence.
Right. And I think most people, well, the people who hate any type of justice reform and think someone who commits a crime, or is even convicted of committing a crime, whether they did it or not, or took a plea or whatever, they're never going to change their minds. But most reasonable people agree, if you're done with your sentence, get back to life.
Yes, and this should be married with the idea of restoring your Second Amendment rights.
All your rights.
Yeah, absolutely. But once you are done, you have paid your debt to society. And I think it's totally reasonable to say you're done with probation. You've paid all your fines. You're no longer a ward of the state in any way. Now you need to be restored to a functioning member of society. That means that you have a right to participate in our republic, and you have a right to protect yourself and your family.
And if Republican policies weren't so dang awful about justice reform and the justice system generally, perhaps they wouldn't be so afraid of having these people have a voice. I mean, but go ahead, sorry.
Well, there are so many felonies, they're stupid. If you get caught with an ounce of weed, misdemeanor. If you get caught with a couple of gummy bears that have THC in them, that's considered a concentrate, and that's a felony.
Yeah.
So when we think felony, we think of forcible felonies. We think robbery, murder, manslaughter, rape. We think of the worst examples possible, but we don't think about somebody who had some gummy bears they took to a concert. We don't think of somebody who had just over an ounce of weed in their car. We don't think about that.
Well, I loved the AJC, who is a liberal bastion of news, I guess, but I love the example they gave. You know, they're trying to plead the case on behalf of Josh McLaurin and all this, and they cite this woman who it says that, you know, she was convicted and sentenced to prison for life for murder and kidnapping, and she's out on parole, and she's like, in her quote, she's like, I don't, you know, I want to be heard, and I have a job, and I'm contributing back to society and all of this stuff, and I can't vote. Okay, well, I understand that you're out and you're on parole and all these things, and let's say that, I mean, she's like, because I'm serving a life sentence, I'll never get to vote. Well, that's like the worst example ever. Nobody's going to advocate for murderers to vote simply just because it's not popular. Like, it doesn't mean that they don't, if they're out and they finish their sentence, that they don't have the right to vote. But it's really hard for people to take that position and say, yes, I want someone who took another person's life to vote.
Right. It's hard for people to wrap their mind around you're given a life sentence and you're out.
Yeah. Well, people don't. It's just like, what's that case where the girl was trafficked and she allegedly killed her trafficker? You know, like, there's circumstances beyond, like, people don't, they just look at the word and they look at the sentence and they're like, oh my God. They don't look at the facts and circumstances surrounding it, and which is why it's problematic and why morality is not supposed to be legislated. Right.
Well, in that case, I mean, there is a place where you say some people just need killing. And someone who holds somebody against their will and forces them into a sex trade. Probably one of those people that would be hard for me as a juror to convict somebody for killing.
Yeah, well, prosecutors feel differently.
Well, I'll say jury nullification. I'm nullified on that one. Anyway, not the point of the story. But yeah, that's a horrible example, and that would not be the poster child that I would use to hold up and say, look at this poor person who will never be able to vote for the rest of her life. To me, it would be somebody who is 18 years old and got popped with drugs, got popped street racing, got popped doing something stupid that kids do. That is not an example of their personality, of what they are going forward, not what they are as an adult.
Well, aren't there some felony DUI offenses that are moral turpitude too?
I'm sure.
And in Josh's defense, Josh McCorn's defense, he did not use that woman as, I just want to be clear, like, she was not the poster child. The AJC did that. He didn't parade her around, but he did take a huge racial swing at it and say 200,000 of our fellow citizens in Georgia are denied voting rights because of a racist policy that was enacted nearly 150 years ago. The denial of voting rights means elected officials are not forced to be accountable to these citizens. And then, of course, the Sentencing Project, which is an advocacy group that does great work. They said that it disproportionately affects minority populations. But arguably, felons are a minority population of their own, so...
I guess they are.
Well, the convicted
Thankfully.
ones, because we're all felons, I mean...
And then we have a quote from State Senator Randy Robertson.
Idiot.
What always gets lost in these discussions is the victim of the crime. All we're asking the convicted to do is once you complete your sentence, then your voting rights are restored in Georgia.
That's not what this is about, Randy. First of all, Randy is a former cop. He's from the Columbus area. He took Josh McCoon's seat. He was chair of the FOP, and he's why I tell people not to join the FOP when they're in law enforcement. I tell them to join the PBA, because the FOP says stupid stuff like this and takes stupid policy positions like this. This isn't about not completing your sentence. It's about outlining what specific crimes, but Randy would have it so that everybody who's a felon doesn't get to have any rights restored, because that's the kind of crap he has advocated for since he got elected.
And what does that do? What does that do for law enforcement? How does that support police officers one bit, whether or not felons who've completed their sentence can go and vote?
It just reiterates their narrative of being tough on crime. Like, actions have consequences. And it goes to the whole idea that nobody is ever like that. It speaks to the idea that there are criminals and there are police, and criminals walk into court and all they ever are in their life is a criminal, that none of their other circumstances and facts should go into what happens in the courtroom and their life after, because they allegedly committed a crime. That is the perspective that people like him take. And he sees it as worlds apart. Criminals and cops, good guys and bad guys. That's it.
Yeah, a very 6-year-old way of viewing the world. Cops and robbers.
Yeah, thank goodness he's not I guess, I don't know what's worse, the fact that he was on the streets, dealing with people's rights, or that he's in the legislature dealing with people's rights, but here we are.
Well, at least on the street, he can't systematically remove the rights from anybody, but as a legislator, he can.
You had to go one at a time on the streets?
Yeah, exactly. And you can only limit so many rights at a time. And then you can be held accountable. As a lawmaker, you could do whatever the hell, you could say whatever the hell you want and influence anybody any way that you want, and drop whatever legislation you want and pander to whoever you want, and there's no consequence.
Freaking hate this time of year.
I thought it was like Christmas for you.
I mean, listen, like, this show is already, I can just, about to get my red marker out for all the bills. No.
F.
Yeah, exactly.
F.
You suck.
Ooh, D-. You're the winner.
Right. Thank you for this. It seemed well-intentioned. D-.
So we have a piece of legislation that I don't think has been dropped yet. It's the It's Philip Singleton's Second Amendment Preservation Act.
I like Philip.
Well, the idea is the state would prohibit the federal government from enforcing any gun laws in the state of Georgia.
And then?
It's mirroring a bill that was passed in Missouri. It's I guess it's just a pandering episode because this is just pandering to his base. The bill there's no way even I don't think the actual wording of the bill is out yet.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot preempt federal law. And I've heard the pot thing used that many states have legalized marijuana in various forms, including Georgia with medical oil, and the federal government doesn't come into the states and enforce it. This is not going to fly with firearms. This is simply trying to capitalize on the idea that Biden's going to try to take your guns and stand up to his constituents and say, look, I'm the guy that's fighting for you. It would prohibit the federal government from enacting policies or taxes that would infringe on individuals' right to keep and bear arms. Quote, this legislation is absolutely necessary to defend the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution and Article 1, Section 1, Paragraph 8 of the Constitution of Georgia. Man, look, the theory has been tried. And we tried it with the National Firearms Act some time ago with the idea that if you make a silencer, you make a machine gun, and they're legal in the state of Georgia, that the ATF can't come and grab you and throw you in prison. And because if it never crosses state lines, it's not a federal issue. And the ATF said, try me. So there's a, I get it. I would love for it to be the way it is, but it's not. So he knows it's a waste of time. Everybody down at the Capitol knows it's a waste of time. The federal government knows it's a waste of time because when the ATF walks in somewhere, they don't care. The best you can possibly do is become a sanctuary state where the state agencies just don't help. You can't bar the federal government from enforcing federal law. I wish you could. It's just not the way it works.
Yeah. I hear you.
I would love to fly the 10th Amendment and go, you know what, federal government, up yours. I'm not crossing state lines with it. It's mine. No, not the way it works. So, Jessica, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of short-ish. I don't know. But it's actually a subject matter that I just want people to consider because, we're doing this whole tiered vaccination distribution thing. And I was reading an article on The Hill last week, which we'll post, but it was talking about North Carolina prisons vaccinating inmates and staff. And it's super controversial. They're not forcing people in the prisons to do it, of course, because we've already watched that movie and it didn't go well. But they're encouraging as many people to get vaccinated as they would like, and people are outraged because inmates and others are getting the shot before, I guess, people in the free world. But my argument is that it's a fiscal matter. Like it's a conservative thing. If somebody wants to be vaccinated and they fit into a certain category and they're not going to have, like compromised issues or whatever the case may be, I think it's a good thing. I think that, our prisons are overrun. Our prisons and jails in a lot of places are overrun with COVID right now. And it's costing us. It costs us a fortune because the states and the federal government have not allocated the money down the same way that they have done for, free care and subsidized care in the hospitals and in other places. And so we are footing the bill, and it's very expensive. And not everybody in prison is a serial murderer or a child molester, and they don't deserve to just die in prison either. And so if you don't support it from a humanitarian perspective, I would encourage people to look at it from a fiscally conservative perspective, because the vaccines is still free, but it's free the same way that they're administering it to others. So there's no added cost for us. But if it prevents people from getting COVID, then those are costs that we, the taxpayers, are not saddled with. And so that's my little closing thought.
Fiscal conservatism. Well, that's a new idea. No, you're absolutely right. And I know you know that. Mm-hmm. We have to pay to treat these folks. It's not like they get COVID and just drop dead or get better. We have to pay to treat them. So all the treatments that are available outside those walls are available inside. So, they're going to have ventilators. They have to have the drugs, the treatment drugs, everything else that we have to give somebody on the outside. You have to make available to them inside. So if the vaccine does work, and you would really, really prefer not to have 60% of the prison population having to be taken care of by medical professionals, because it's expensive. And we know it spreads like wildfire because you cannot social distance in an overcrowded prison. Now, if you want to do a little justice reform and get rid of some of the stupid laws that put people away, well, hell, that'd be fantastic. But that's just not, that's off the table. Why would they ever do that? Good God. My only closing thought is the new leader of the free world was inaugurated, and the only thing that we have on social media out of it, the best thing, is Bernie Sanders. The Bernie memes have been awesome.
They have.
They're fantastic. I mean, even the one that says that Bernie looks like he's going to swing by Joe's thing, but it's not his entire day. I mean, he's bundled up in like mittens and a coat. Everybody else is in a suit with an overcoat and all that stuff. Bernie he looks like Bernie. He looks like an angry grandfather who's not happy about having to go to a school function and sit in the cold. So that's been awesome. If you like what you heard, be sure to like and share us on social media. Share us with your friends. If you don't like what you heard, subject your friends to listening to us ramble on about the misdeeds in Washington and under the Gold Dome. So for Eric Cumby, our editor, for Jessica Szilagyi, I'm Dave Roberts. Have a great week.